Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vale had processed prisoner transfers on 12 different stations throughout her career in the Galactic Corrections Authority, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in the detention facility aboard mining station Kepler-7. The manifest listed 43 detainees, raiders, smugglers, and various criminals caught during recent enforcement sweeps. Standard procedure, routine paperwork, nothing that should have required a senior officer's personal attention. But prisoner 847 wasn't on any standard manifest. What exactly is this? Sarah asked, reviewing the classification codes that made no sense according to her training. Special case, replied Station Warden Hayes, his expression uncomfortable. Been here 6 months. Nobody wants to touch the paperwork. Why not? Because she's Kithani. Sarah felt a chill run through her. The Kithani were one of the galaxy's rarest species, natural empaths who could sense and absorb emotions from other beings. Their homeworld had been destroyed in a stellar collapse decades ago, leaving fewer than 1,000 survivors scattered throughout known space. A Kithani child in a maximum security detention facility? Sarah's voice carried the kind of controlled anger that made subordinates very nervous. Warden Hayes, please tell me there's an excellent explanation for this. Captured during a raid on a trafficking vessel in the Tau Ceti system. The ship was carrying various, exotic cargo, for private collectors. Hayes pulled up holographic displays showing the arrest records. She was found in the cargo hold, heavily sedated and restrained. And instead of being transferred to protective custody, she was brought to a prison facility. The trafficking charges are complicated. Various agencies have competing claims for custody, research institutions, government psychological warfare divisions, private collectors with legal acquisition permits. Hayes looked increasingly uncomfortable. She's been in legal limbo while the lawyers argue over jurisdiction. Sarah studied the prisoner classification data, noting details that made her stomach turn. Medical records showed evidence of systematic abuse, psychological conditioning, and what appeared to be forced training in using empathic abilities for interrogation purposes. I need to see her. Ma'am, I should warn you, the guards report that she's unstable. Dangerous. Her empathic abilities can be overwhelming for anyone who gets too close. Dangerous how? She can sense your emotions and reflect them back amplified. Some of the guards have experienced panic attacks, rage episodes, severe depression after exposure to her. Hayes led Sarah through multiple security checkpoints toward the isolation wing. We've had to keep her in complete solitary confinement for the safety of staff and other prisoners. The isolation wing was a study in institutional cruelty disguised as security protocol. Each cell was designed to prevent any contact between inmates, with reinforced walls, minimal lighting, and surveillance systems that monitored every breath. Cell 847C, Hayes announced, stopping before a heavy door marked with hazard warnings and psychological evaluation notices. Sarah looked through the reinforced window and felt her heart break. The girl couldn't have been more than 16 by human standards, though Kithani aged differently. She sat in the corner of her cell, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at nothing with eyes that seemed far older than her apparent years. Her skin had the characteristic pale blue tint of her species, but it was marked with scars and what looked like old injection sites. Her hair, which should have been the lustrous silver typical of Kithani, was dull and poorly maintained. But what struck Sarah most was the girl's posture, not defiance or anger, but complete resignation. This was someone who had stopped expecting anything good to happen to her. Open the cell, Sarah ordered. Ma'am, protocol requires. Open it. Hayes reluctantly activated the security locks, and the heavy door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Sarah entered the cell slowly, noting how the girl immediately tensed but didn't look up. Hello, Sarah said softly. My name is Sarah Vale. I'm here to review your case. The girl's head lifted slightly, revealing eyes that were a startling shade of violet, beautiful, but empty in a way that spoke of terrible experiences. You're not here to test me, the girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Test you how? To see what emotions I can make you feel. To see if I can make you angry enough to hit me, or sad enough to cry, or afraid enough to run away. Her voice carried no emotion, as if she were reciting a lesson learned through repetition. Sarah felt rage building in her chest. Not at the girl, but at the system that had taught a child to expect abuse disguised as evaluation. No, Sarah said, sitting down slowly so she was at eye level with the girl. I'm not here to test you. I'm here to understand why you're in prison when you haven't committed any crimes. The girl blinked, confusion flickering across her features. I haven't. According to the records, you were a victim of trafficking. Victims don't belong in detention facilities. But I'm dangerous. Everyone says I'm dangerous. The girl's voice carried a note of desperate confusion. I make people feel things they don't want to feel. I can't control it. That's not your fault. That's what empathic abilities do, they respond to the emotions around you. Sarah kept her voice gentle, noting how the girl seemed to be absorbing her emotional state and becoming slightly calmer. Has anyone ever explained to you how your abilities actually work? They said I was broken. That normal Kithani can control their empathy, but I just absorb everything and make it worse. Tears began forming in the girl's violet eyes. They said I was defective. Sarah felt her heart breaking as she realized this. Sarah spent the night reviewing every document in prisoner 847's file, and what she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about galactic justice systems. The girl's history read like a catalog of systematic exploitation disguised as legal procedure. According to the trafficking investigation reports, she had been captured as a small child during raids on Kithani refugee settlements. Her empathic abilities had been identified early and exploited by a succession of criminal organizations who used her to extract information from prisoners, manipulate emotions during negotiations, and provide what one document euphemistically called enhanced interrogation services. Enhanced interrogation, Sarah muttered, reading through medical reports that documented years of psychological conditioning and chemical treatments designed to amplify the girl's natural empathy while suppressing her own emotional responses. They turned a child into a living weapon. The most disturbing part wasn't the abuse itself. Sarah had seen enough crime reports to understand the depths of sentient cruelty. It was the clinical precision with which it had been carried out. Training schedules, performance evaluations, behavioral modification protocols. The girl hadn't just been victimized, she'd been systematically programmed to see herself as a defective tool rather than an abused person. Sarah returned to the detention facility the next morning with a bag of supplies that would have seemed ordinary to anyone else but represented luxuries beyond imagination to someone who had never owned anything. Good morning, she said, entering the cell with the same gentle approach she'd used the day before. The girl looked up from where she sat in exactly the same position, as if she hadn't moved in the intervening hours. You came back. I said I would. Did you think I wouldn't? People lie to me sometimes. They say things that make me feel hopeful, then they do the opposite. The girl's voice carried the flat acceptance of someone who had learned not to trust promises. It hurts more when you hope first. Sarah sat down across from her, noting how the girl automatically positioned herself to monitor Sarah's emotional state, a survival mechanism learned through necessity. I brought you some things, Sarah said, opening the bag carefully. A blanket, some books, personal hygiene items. And this. She held up a small mirror, watching as the girl stared at her own reflection with obvious confusion. I've never seen myself before, the girl whispered, touching her face as if to confirm that the image was real. I look different than I thought. Different how? Smaller. Younger. Less dangerous. She traced her reflection with a fingertip. The people who owned me said I looked fierce and frightening. They said other beings would fear me on sight. You look like a young person who's been hurt and needs someone to take care of her. The girl's hand trembled as she lowered the mirror. No one has ever wanted to take care of me. Well, someone does now. Sarah spent the next hour explaining concepts that should have been familiar to any sentient being but were completely foreign to someone who had never experienced them. Personal property, privacy, choice, the difference between service and slavery. So when you gave me these things, the girl said slowly, holding the blanket like it was made of precious metal, you don't expect me to do anything in return. Nothing at all. But that doesn't make sense. Everything has a purpose. Every kindness has a price. Not this one. The girl studied Sarah's face with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Are you testing me? To see how I react to unexpected kindness. I'm trying to show you what kindness actually feels like when it doesn't want anything from you. I don't understand the difference. Sarah realized she was witnessing something heartbreaking. A person who had never experienced genuine altruism trying to understand the concept from scratch. Let me ask you something, Sarah said. What do you want? Not what others want from you, but what would make you happy. The girl blinked, clearly struggling with the question. I don't know how to answer that. Try. Anything at all. I would like. The girl paused, as if the words were dangerous. I would like to not hurt anymore. Not just my body, but the inside hurting that never stops. The emotional pain you absorb from others. Yes, but also the pain of being empty. Of never having anything that belongs to me, never having a name that's mine, never having anyone who cares if I'm afraid or sad or tired. Tears began flowing down her cheeks. I would like someone to choose me not because I'm useful, but because they want me to exist. Sarah felt her own eyes filling with tears as she realized the profound isolation this child had endured. What if I told you that someone already has chosen you? I would ask why you're lying to me. I'm not lying. I'm telling you that I choose you. The girl stared at Sarah with an expression of such desperate hope mixed with disbelief that Sarah understood she was witnessing someone's first encounter with unconditional acceptance. You choose me, she whispered, as if the words were too dangerous to speak aloud. I choose you. But you don't even know what I can do. You haven't tested my abilities or evaluated my usefulness. You don't know if I'm worth the resources you'd spend on me. I know that you're a person who deserves safety and care and the chance to heal from what's been done to you. That's enough. The girl began crying in earnest then. Not the quick, hidden tears Sarah had seen before, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from years of accumulated pain. I don't know how to be chosen, she gasped between sobs. I don't know how to be wanted instead of used. Then I'll teach you, Sarah said, offering her arms in case the girl wanted comfort. For the first time since Sarah had met her, the girl reached out voluntarily, collapsing into Sarah's embrace with the desperate gratitude of someone who had never experienced protective touch. What happens now? The girl asked when her tears finally subsided. Now we figure out how to get you out of here legally and safely. And then? Then you learn what it's like to have choices about your own life. That evening, Sarah began the complex legal process of challenging the detention system's treatment of trafficking victims. But more importantly, she began researching guardian adoption procedures for displaced persons. Because sometimes, Sarah reflected as she prepared the paperwork that would change both their lives, choosing someone meant being willing to fight the entire galaxy to protect them. And this particular someone, this traumatized child who didn't even know her own worth, was definitely worth fighting for. Sarah's investigation into the legal framework surrounding prisoner 847's detention revealed a system designed to perpetuate exploitation while maintaining the fiction of due process. What she discovered made her question everything she believed about galactic justice. The problem, explained legal advocate Martinez during their emergency consultation, is that she exists in a bureaucratic void. Technically, she's not charged with any crimes, but she's also not classified as a victim because her empathic abilities are considered potentially weaponizable assets. Weaponizable assets. Sarah felt her anger building. She's a traumatized child. According to the legal classification, she's an uncontrolled empathic entity of unknown loyalty and training. The fact that she was conditioned by criminal organizations to use her abilities for interrogation makes her a security risk in the eyes of multiple agencies. Sarah reviewed the custody claims that had been filed by various organizations, each one more disturbing than the last. The Psychological Warfare Division wanted to study her conditioning methods. The Xenobiology Institute sought to research empathic manipulation techniques. 3 different private research corporations had submitted bids to purchase her contract for voluntary participation in empathic enhancement studies. None of these organizations are offering to help her, Sarah observed. They're all planning to continue exploiting her under the guise of research. That's the legal loophole. As long as the research is classified as beneficial to galactic security or advancing scientific understanding, the exploitation can continue indefinitely. Sarah made a decision that would put her own career at risk. What would it take to get legal guardianship of her? You'd need to prove several things. That you can provide adequate care for a being with specialized needs, that you have legitimate reasons for requesting custody that aren't related to exploiting her abilities, and that granting you guardianship serves her best interests rather than just removing her from the legal marketplace. And then you become personally and legally responsible for someone whose empathic abilities make her a target for every criminal organization, government agency, and research institution in known space. Sarah spent the next week preparing the most important legal documents of her career while continuing to visit the girl in detention. Each conversation revealed more about the systematic destruction of her sense of self-worth. They told me I was lucky, the girls said during one of their talks. That most Kithani children captured in trafficking operations don't survive the conditioning process. They said I should be grateful that my abilities were strong enough to make me valuable. Grateful for being tortured and enslaved. Grateful for being kept alive when others weren't. The girl's violet eyes held the haunted look of someone forced to see survival as a privilege rather than a right. They said I should understand that without them, I would have died meaningless and alone. They lied to you, Sarah said firmly. Your life has meaning because you exist, not because others decided to use you. But if I'm not useful, why would anyone care if I live or die? Sarah realized she was confronting a worldview so damaged that the concept of inherent worth was literally incomprehensible to someone who had never experienced it. Let me ask you something different, Sarah said. When you absorb emotions from others, what do you sense from me when I'm with you? The girl considered the question carefully. Warmth. Concern. Something gentle that makes me feel safer. She paused. And something else I don't have a name for. What does it feel like? Like you see something in me that I can't see in myself. Like you think I matter in a way that has nothing to do with what I can do for you. That feeling has a name. It's called caring about someone for their own sake. People don't do that. Some people do. The right people do. The girl was quiet for a long moment, then asked the question that broke Sarah's heart. Are you the right people? Yes, Sarah said without hesitation. And I'm going to prove it to you. 3 days later, Sarah faced a legal review board consisting of representatives from various agencies with competing claims for the girl's custody. The hearing room was filled with officials who saw the girl as a valuable resource to be allocated rather than a person whose welfare should be considered. Commander Vale, began the presiding magistrate, you're requesting guardianship of a being with specialized abilities and complex medical needs. What qualifies you to provide appropriate care? My qualifications aren't technical, they're moral. This child needs someone who will prioritize her healing over her utility. The other petitioners have extensive research facilities, medical resources, and expertise in managing empathic entities, pointed out Dr. Voss from the Psychological Warfare Division. A single guardian cannot provide the level of specialized care that institutional placement would offer. What kind of care? Sarah asked. The same care that created the psychological conditioning she's suffering from now. Commander Vale, the magistrate warned, please limit your comments to relevant legal arguments. Sarah activated her presentation display, showing medical records and psychological evaluations that painted a clear picture of systematic abuse. Every institution petitioning for custody has submitted research proposals that treat her as a subject to be studied rather than a victim to be healed. They're planning to continue the exploitation that damaged her, just with better documentation and legal protections. Research that could benefit countless beings throughout the galaxy, Dr. Voss interjected. Her conditioning provides unique insights into empathic manipulation techniques that could prevent future trafficking operations. By continuing to traumatize someone who's already been tortured for years. Sarah pulled up the girls' own words from their recorded conversations, playing audio that revealed the depth of psychological damage caused by treating empathic abilities as tools rather than natural talents. This is what institutional care has taught her, Sarah said as the girl's voice filled the hearing room. That her worth is measured by her usefulness. That survival requires gratitude for abuse. That she doesn't deserve basic consideration as a sentient being. The room fell silent as the officials listened to a child who literally couldn't understand kindness without strings attached. Furthermore, Sarah continued, I'm not requesting guardianship to isolate her from appropriate care. I'm requesting it to ensure that any care she receives prioritizes her well-being over research value. And what would you do with her? Asked the representative from the Xenobiology Institute. Help her heal. Teach her that she has choices about her own life. Show her what it feels like to be valued for who she is rather than what she can do. That's very idealistic, Commander, but what about the larger implications? Her abilities could be invaluable for preventing future trafficking operations, developing countermeasures against empathic manipulation, advancing our understanding of interspecies psychology. Sarah looked directly at each board member. What about her right to choose whether to participate in that research? What about her right to heal from trauma before being asked to relive it for scientific purposes? What about her right to be a person instead of a resource? The hearing continued for 3 hours, with various officials arguing about jurisdiction, research priorities, and security concerns. Through it all, Sarah kept returning to the same central point: the girl deserved to be treated as someone whose own wishes mattered. Finally, the magistrate called for a recess to deliberate. As the officials filed out, Dr. Voss approached Sarah with an expression of barely concealed frustration. Commander Vale, you're making a mistake. That girl has been conditioned since childhood to be dependent, to serve others, to find purpose through utility. Without institutional structure, she'll be lost. Without exploitation, she'll have the chance to discover who she really is. And if what she really is turns out to be exactly what her conditioning made her? What if removing the structure just leaves her empty? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then at least she'll be empty by choice instead of design. When the board reconvened, the magistrate's expression was unreadable. After consideration of all arguments and review of relevant case law, this board grants temporary guardianship to Commander Vale for a period of 6 months, subject to regular evaluation and oversight. Sarah felt relief flood through her, but the magistrate wasn't finished. However, Commander, you should understand that this decision makes you personally responsible for a being whose abilities and history make her a target for exploitation. You're not just accepting guardianship, you're accepting the obligation to protect her from a galaxy that will see her as valuable property rather than a person. I understand, Sarah replied. And I accept that responsibility completely. That evening, Sarah returned to the detention facility with legal documents that would change everything for both of them. The guardianship was approved, she told the girl, who stared at the paperwork with confusion. What does that mean? It means you don't have to stay in this cell anymore. It means you get to come home with me and learn what it's like to have someone whose job is to take care of you instead of use you. The girl was quiet for so long that Sarah wondered if she'd somehow misunderstood. You chose me, she finally whispered. Even when other people wanted me for important things, you chose me just to be safe. Yes. I still don't understand. Sarah's apartment on residential deck 7 had never felt so small or so important. What had been a comfortable space for one person suddenly needed to accommodate someone who had never lived anywhere that wasn't a cell, a cargo hold, or a research facility. More challenging than the physical space, however, was helping someone learn to exist without the rigid structure of captivity. This is your room, Sarah said, showing the girl the guest quarters she'd hastily converted into something resembling a teenager's bedroom. Everything in here belongs to you. You can arrange it however you want, change anything you don't like, keep it private if you need space. The girl stood in the doorway as if afraid to enter. What am I supposed to do in here? Whatever you want. Sleep, think, look out the window, read books. It's your space. But what's my purpose in this room? What function does it serve for you? Sarah realized they were confronting the fundamental difference between existing as property and living as a person. It doesn't serve any function for me. It serves you. It's a place where you can be yourself without anyone watching or evaluating or expecting anything. The girl moved into the room with the careful precision of someone exploring potentially dangerous territory. She touched the bed, the desk, the small collection of books Sarah had provided, as if each item might disappear if handled incorrectly. These are really mine, she asked, picking up a small stuffed animal, a earth lion that Sarah had chosen for its comforting expression. Completely yours. Even if I don't do anything to earn them? Even then. The girl clutched the stuffed animal to her chest with desperate intensity. I've never owned anything before. What does it feel like? Scary. And wonderful. And confusing. She looked up at Sarah with those violet eyes that were slowly learning to show hope. What if I break something? What if I'm not good at having things? Then we'll figure it out together. Over the following weeks, Sarah discovered that helping someone learn to be free was far more complex than she'd anticipated. The girl's entire understanding of social interaction was based on service and utility. She tried to clean Sarah's quarters, prepare her meals, and anticipate her needs with the desperate efficiency of someone who believed her survival depended on being useful. You don't have to take care of me, Sarah explained for the dozenth time, finding the girl reorganizing her closet at dawn. I'm supposed to be taking care of you. But then what's my role? What am I supposed to contribute? You're supposed to heal, learn, and figure out what makes you happy. That seems selfish. Learning to take care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. The girl struggled with concepts that most people learned in early childhood. Personal preferences, privacy, the right to say no, the difference between helping someone because you choose to and serving someone because you have to. I like the color blue, she announced one day as if she'd made a profound discovery. What made you realize that? I was looking at different things around the apartment, and the blue ones made me feel calm inside. Not the forced calm from suppression training, but actually peaceful. She touched a blue throw pillow with wonder. Is it normal to have favorite colors? Completely normal. What else do you like? I think I like music. The soft kind that doesn't have words. It makes the emotions in my head quieter. She paused, looking uncertain. Is it okay to like things just because they make me feel better? It's not just okay, it's important. Your preferences matter. Even the silly ones. Especially the silly ones. Slowly, carefully, the girl began to discover pieces of herself that had been buried under years of conditioning. She liked starlight better than artificial illumination. She preferred tea to coffee. She enjoyed books about adventures in places she'd never seen. She found comfort in soft textures and quiet spaces. But the most significant breakthrough came 3 weeks after she'd moved in, when Sarah found her crying in her room. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, sitting beside her on the bed. "I was thinking about my name," the girl said through tears. "Or the fact that I don't have one. Everyone just called me whatever was convenient: subject, experiment, girl, thing. I don't know who I am without someone telling me. Would you like to choose a name for yourself?" "Can I do that?" "Of course. What feels right to you?" The girl was quiet for a long time, considering possibilities with the seriousness of someone making their first truly personal decision. "I heard a name once, when I was very small. Before the conditioning started. One of the other Kithani children in the facility called herself Zara. She was kind to me until..." Her voice trailed off. "Until what?" "Until they separated us because they said emotional attachments made us less effective." Zara's voice grew stronger. "I'd like to be called Zara. To honor her memory and to have something that connects me to who I was before they tried to make me into something else." "Zara," Sarah said, and the girl's face lit up at hearing her chosen name spoken with warmth and respect. "It's a beautiful name." "You think so?" "I think it suits you perfectly." That evening, Sarah helped Zara complete the legal paperwork to establish her new identity. Watching her carefully write, Zara Vale, in the name field, taking Sarah's family name as part of their guardian relationship, was one of the most moving experiences of Sarah's life. "Are you sure you want to share your name with me?" Zara asked. "I don't want to take something that doesn't belong to me." "You're not taking it, I'm giving it to you. That's what families do." "Families," Zara repeated the word like she was testing its meaning. "Are we really family now?" "We are if you want to be." "I do want to be." "But Sarah, I should tell you something." Zara's expression grew troubled. "I've been having dreams about the people who owned me. Sometimes I wake up and for a moment I forget where I am. I remember the conditioning and I try to be what they trained me to be. That's completely understandable. Healing from trauma takes time. But what if I can't fully heal? What if some part of me is permanently broken?" Zara's voice carried the fear that had been haunting her since arriving. "What if you chose me and I turn out to be too damaged to be worth the effort?" Sarah took Zara's hands in hers, noting how much steadier they'd become over the past weeks. "Zara, I didn't choose you because I expected you to be perfect. I chose you because I saw someone worth caring about, regardless of what healing might look like for you. Even if I have bad days. Even if sometimes I forget how to be free. Even then. That's what unconditional means. It doesn't depend on your performance or your progress or your ability to be what others expect." Zara began crying again, but these tears were different from the ones Sarah had seen before. They were tears of relief rather than despair. "I've never had unconditional anything," she whispered. "Now you do." That night, for the first time since leaving detention, Zara slept through the night without nightmares. When Sarah checked on her in the morning, she found Zara had arranged her room exactly the way she wanted it. Books organized by color rather than size, the stuffed lion positioned where she could see it from her bed, drawings she'd made taped to the wall showing scenes of peaceful places she hoped to visit someday. "Good morning, Zara," Sarah said, and watched her light up at hearing her name used naturally, casually, with the assumption that she belonged. "Good morning, Sarah. I was thinking, would it be okay if I helped you with breakfast? Not because I have to, but because I want to." "I'd love that." As they cooked together, Zara carefully measuring ingredients while Sarah handled the heat sources she still found intimidating, Sarah reflected on how much they'd both changed in just a few weeks. Zara was learning to trust, to make choices, to believe that her preferences mattered and her well-being was valuable for its own sake. But Sarah was learning too. About the profound responsibility of helping someone rebuild their sense of self, about the patience required to undo years of psychological damage, and about the joy that came from watching someone discover their own worth. "Sarah," Zara said as they sat down to eat the breakfast they'd prepared together. "Thank you for choosing me. I still don't understand why you did it, but I'm grateful every day that you saw something in me worth protecting." "Thank you for letting me be your family," Sarah replied. "For trusting me enough to heal, and for teaching me what real courage looks like." Zara smiled, the genuine, unguarded expression of someone who was finally learning that safety and love could exist without conditions attached. Outside their apartment, the galaxy continued its complex dance of politics and power, and somewhere in its vast expanse were others like Zara who were still waiting for someone to choose them for their own sake rather than their utility. But inside this small space that had become home, one traumatized girl was learning that she mattered simply because she existed, and one guardian was discovering that the most important choice she'd ever made was deciding that someone else's healing was worth any sacrifice. Some bonds, Sarah realized, weren't created by biology or law, but by the simple decision to see someone's inherent worth and choose to protect it unconditionally. And sometimes, that choice changed both lives in ways that neither person could have imagined possible. "6 months after Zara had first chosen her name, Sarah found her in the apartment's small garden space, tending to plants with the same careful attention she'd once given to her stuffed lion. The transformation was remarkable. The hollow-eyed prisoner had become a confident young woman who moved with purpose rather than resignation. "The Altarian peace lilies are responding well to empathic cultivation," Zara reported, her violet eyes bright with satisfaction. "When I project feelings of safety and growth toward them, they bloom more readily than with standard hydroponic systems." "You've discovered that your abilities can nurture as well as serve others' purposes," Sarah observed. "It's strange," Zara said, touching a particularly vibrant bloom. "For years, I was told my empathy was a tool for extraction and manipulation. But when I use it by choice, to help things grow and heal, it feels like this is what it was meant for." Sarah smiled, remembering the terrified girl who had once believed her natural gifts made her dangerous and broken. "Have you given any thought to the proposal from the rehabilitation center? The one about helping other trafficking survivors?" Zara's expression grew thoughtful. "I want to help them, but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that being around people who've been hurt the way I was hurt will bring back all the conditioning. Scared that I'll absorb their trauma and become broken again." Zara sat on the garden bench, her hands automatically reaching for the small comfort object she still carried, a smooth stone Sarah had given her during her first week of freedom. "But also scared that if I don't help them, I'm being selfish with the healing I've received." "What do you want to do, regardless of fear?" "I want to show them what you showed me, that kindness without expectation exists. That they have worth beyond their usefulness. That healing is possible even when you can't imagine it." Zara's voice grew stronger with conviction. "Sarah, I want to be for others what you were for me when I couldn't be anything for myself. Then we should visit the center and see what kind of help they need." The Galactic Rehabilitation Center was a complex of interconnected facilities designed to provide comprehensive care for beings recovering from trafficking, forced labor, and other forms of exploitation. Sarah had helped establish the center using her connections in the corrections system, but this was Zara's first visit. "It's bigger than I expected," Zara said as they walked through the main reception area, watching staff members interact with residents from dozens of different species. "Over 300 survivors in various stages of recovery," explained Dr. Marina Santos, the center's chief psychologist. "We provide medical care, psychological support, legal advocacy, and life skills training. But we've struggled with one particular population." "Which population?" Sarah asked. "Empathic species. Beings like Zara whose natural abilities were exploited for emotional manipulation, interrogation, or psychic warfare applications." Dr. Santos gestured toward a sealed wing of the facility. "We can treat their physical injuries and provide standard psychological therapy, but their empathic abilities make them extremely vulnerable to absorbing trauma from other residents. Most of them remain in isolation because proximity to other survivors triggers emotional overload. How many? Zara asked quietly. 43 individuals from 8 different empathic species. Some have been here for years, physically healed but psychologically unable to integrate into group programs because the emotional environment overwhelms their natural sensitivity. Zara was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see her processing the implications. 43 people trapped by the same overwhelming empathy that had once made her own healing so difficult. Could I meet them? Zara asked. Are you sure? The isolation ward can be emotionally intense even for staff members. I'm sure. The isolation ward was a study in comfortable loneliness. Individual apartments provided privacy and safety, but the lack of connection between residents was obvious. Sarah watched Zara move through the common area, noting how her presence seemed to calm the other empathic survivors without any visible effort on her part. You're projecting stability, observed Lyron, a young Deltan whose empathic abilities had been exploited by military intelligence operations. Most people here radiate either pity or clinical detachment. You feel safe. Because I've been where you are, Zara replied simply. I know what it's like to have your gifts turned against you, and I know that healing is possible. You were trafficked too. For most of my life. Until someone chose to help me learn that my abilities could be gifts instead of weapons. Over the next hour, Zara spoke with each of the isolated empaths, and Sarah watched something remarkable happen. For the first time in years, these survivors were able to be in the same space with another person without emotional overwhelm, because Zara's presence provided the empathic equivalent of a calming influence. This is unprecedented, Dr. Santos whispered to Sarah. She's creating an emotional buffer zone that allows them to interact safely with others. I've never seen anything like it. It's because she's not trying to fix them or study them, Sarah replied. She's just showing them that someone understands their experience and survived it. After they left the center, Zara was unusually quiet during the transport home. What are you thinking about? Sarah asked. About how isolated they are. How hopeless some of them looked. Zara's voice carried the weight of recognition. Sarah, I could help them. Not just by visiting, but by teaching them what you taught me, how to use their empathy as a choice rather than a burden. It would mean spending a lot of time around trauma and pain. Are you ready for that? I don't know if anyone's ever ready for that. But I know that 6 months ago, I was in a cell thinking I was too broken to ever be worth saving. If you hadn't chosen to see potential in me instead of just damage. Zara paused. Those people deserve someone who understands that they're not defined by what was done to them. And you want to be that someone? I want to try. With your support, if you're willing to help. Sarah looked at this remarkable young woman who had transformed from a nameless prisoner into someone ready to dedicate her life to helping others heal from similar trauma. Zara, I've never been more proud of anyone in my life. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the observation gallery above the center's group therapy room, watching Zara lead her first session with newly arrived empathic survivors. The program she developed, Empathy by Choice, was already being requested by rehabilitation facilities throughout the galaxy. She's extraordinary, Dr. Santos commented, watching Zara help a young Kithani boy understand that his ability to sense others' emotions didn't make him responsible for fixing those emotions. The other survivors respond to her in ways they don't respond to anyone else. It's because she speaks their language, Sarah replied. Not just linguistically, but experientially. She knows what it's like to have your greatest gift turned into your greatest vulnerability. Below them, Zara was explaining concepts that Sarah recognized from their own journey together. The difference between choosing to help and being forced to serve, the importance of emotional boundaries, the right to say no even when others needed your abilities. The most important thing to remember, Zara was saying, is that your empathy is yours to share or withhold as you choose. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions unless you decide to help them. And that decision is always yours to make. A young Deltan raised her hand. But what if people are angry when we don't help? What if they say we're selfish? Then they don't understand the difference between a gift and an obligation, Zara replied. Gifts are given freely, by choice, when the giver decides to share them. Anything else is just exploitation with better manners. Sarah watched Zara work with these traumatized survivors, seeing in each interaction the reflection of her own patient teaching during those first difficult months. Zara was passing forward the unconditional acceptance she'd received, teaching others that they had worth beyond their usefulness. Dr. Santos, Sarah said, I'd like to discuss expanding the program. We're already getting requests from 12 other rehabilitation facilities. I was thinking bigger than that. What would it take to establish a galaxy-wide network of centers specifically designed for empathic survivors? Dr. Santos stared at her. The resources required would be enormous. The political will,